when I see a lot of heroes out there, a lot of them do kind of fit the role of basically you're picking the favorite of a certain type or structure of an individual, right? No, I'm picking the ones that are so unique that they stand out to me, as it's not just that they're the basketball player that's gifted and talented. It's as if they were someone who was gifted and talented, thus they got put into a position of being like the top player. And I'd be able to look at things and diagnose them and realize this is the way it's easy for people to understand, and this way it's difficult. They need to know all of this, but you can't go overboard. But at the same time, if you don't share everything, you know what? As soon as they hear about that, they're going to turn it off, blah, 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 down the line, until I realized, you know what? Do what your enemy's doing. Present it in such a manner that makes them want the information. And I couldn't figure out what that was, because people didn't necessarily want what I wanted. I mean, I said I wanted world peace. Well, if that's the case, then maybe you don't want to get people to know about the truth. What was eerie is that I was asking people about 9/11 right off the bat. I was so nervous that people didn't know about it. And one person said, I know more about 9/11 than you know. Oh, thank God. And then to find out later, they literally were just saying, I know some details about it, the planes hitting and all this and that. They didn't know, just like I didn't know. Why the fuck didn't I know? And that's exactly what I should ask. Oh my God, why are we blaming the Muslims for that? They're targeting them, aren't they? Oh my God, now I know. And it was the questions that came from me finding out that truth that not just were testimony to me, but was a grander revealing of what these goddamn motherfuckers were doing. Because you start asking questions. And yeah, it starts making you think. Oh, I don't want to do that. No, you kind of do. Because what then happens is you start thinking, God, I don't ever want to be that person. What? Having other people know all of that and not telling me, or worse, telling me and me calling them crazy. And it turns out, because of my ignorance and not paying attention, I'm the one who's fucking crazy. And I can't unprove that. At least these people are standing up for what they know is right, even in danger of their lives, because they are gods and prophets. And I have to tell you, if it wasn't for them, obviously, I would never be here, and I sure as hell would be happy to say I tried my best for you.
An architect experienced in steel structures. Now Richard Gage is touring the country with a controversial message about September 11th.
Richard Gage is here to show us why he's calling for a more thorough investigation into the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
Well, first of all, give us a little bit more about your background.
Well, I'm an architect of 20 years, a member of the American Institute of Architects, and I've been studying steel-framed, fireproof buildings for about that long.
We ask that for clarification because as we get into this, we want people to make sure that you're not just somebody with a wacky idea.
Right.
Okay? You come with some science to you. What is the official reason for the collapse of the World Trade Center towers?
Well, we're told that the planes hit the buildings and there was an explosion and a fire, and about an hour and a half later, in the case of the North Tower, the buildings collapsed due to structural weakening due to the fires. Mm-hmm. The problem is that we don't have large gradual deformations associated with collapses, and fires in high-rises have never brought down a steel frame high-rise building at all, ever. And what we have, unfortunately, is the evidence in the Twin Towers and the third skyscraper to collapse that day, which most people don't know anything about it. We have the evidence of the 10 key features of controlled demolition. In the case of Building 7, it collapses straight down into its own footprint at free fall speed in the first 100 feet. It's dropping, as you can see, symmetrically, smoothly, at free fall speed in the first 100 feet, 2.5 seconds. This is uncanny. There's 40,000 tons of structural steel designed to resist this collapse.
Is it, what, a 47-story building?
Yeah, this is called Building 7, right? A football field away from the Twin Towers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what we're showing is left what happened. In fact, right is a controlled where you are using, or the people who made this happen, used demolition.
Indeed, and this is a direct comparison. And you can see that, indeed, almost free fall speed, free fall acceleration through 40,000 tons of structural steel. That is uncanny. So we have 700 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation as a result of this evidence and the evidence in the World Trade Center that is very explosive. Almost every architect and engineer we show this information to agrees with us that these are controlled demolitions. If we can get them to look at the information, because obviously the implications of a controlled demolition are dark, for our country,
Yeah.
because that means somebody besides Al-Qaeda was involved, because these have to be easily 3 of the most highly secure buildings outside the Pentagon.
Now, if that was a controlled demolition, would there not be any evidence at the ground level of explosives within the building
debris?
itself? That's the debris that's left?
Indeed, and what we find down there is pools of molten iron.
What does that mean?
Several tons. Exactly. What is that doing there? The first responders see it. The structural engineers see it. It's documented by FEMA, the melting of steel. Normal office fires is what's supposed to have brought these buildings down, along with jet plane impacts. But jet fuel and office fires don't produce molten iron or molten steel. It doesn't begin to melt until 3,000 degrees. But what we have is the fires only produce maybe 1,600 degrees. So what produced all that molten iron? Well, it has in it the chemical evidence of a special incendiary, which is thermite, a high-tech incendiary used to cut through steel like
You
a hot knife
found
through
that?
butter. Indeed, in all of the dust throughout lower Manhattan, we have a 4 to 6 inch thick layer of this dust, and throughout it we have evidence of tiny spheres, billions of them, several tons of previously molten iron. Well, how does that happen? If you have molten iron, the byproduct of thermite is molten iron, and it's dispersed throughout all of this dust.
Now, you were allowed to go in and get samples and examine it?
Oh, there's plenty of dust. A lot of people have this dust, and 4 of these samples have been sent to physicist Stephen Jones, formerly of Brigham Young University, and they find in it not only these spheres, with which others have found too. USGS, R.J. Lee, doing toxicological studies. These spheres have iron, aluminum, fluorine, manganese, very unusual elements associated only with thermite, and there's small chips of unignited thermite as well. This is very high-tech thermite, nanothermite. It's not found in a cave in Afghanistan. It's produced in very sophisticated Defense Department contracting laboratories.
Okay, well, we have an enemy here. That the finger has been pointed to, that it was the work of Al-Qaeda. This was the work of Osama bin Laden, at least to get the planes all going into the buildings and into the field in Pennsylvania.